And I just want to stop right here and look at 3 lessons that we learn from Esther's courage. The first is this: courage is not an initial response. Here's what I mean by that. Courage only exists where there is fear to overcome. Nelson Mandela said this about courage. He said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers fear." And Esther's initial response is fear. Esther's very first response to all of this is that, like, the king could kill me. Like, I am not going in there if I'm gonna die. And Mordecai challenges her on that, and she responds with courage. But courage does not exist where there is not fear to overcome. And so what we learn from this is that fear is a prerequisite for courage, not a disqualification. Fear is a prerequisite for courage. It does not disqualify us. The next thing that we learn is really something we need to ask ourselves is, who's got your ear? Like, who are you listening to? We live in a society that has no shortage of opinions. Everywhere we turn, we are bombarded with opinions. News, social media, you name it. And not just that, we have never been more bombarded with agreeable opinions. And here's what I mean by that. I don't want to get too into the weeds on this. We could talk about this for a long time. But social media is a for-profit business. And social media is how a lot of us consume information. And what social media does is they are putting things on your feed that they think you will either like or will keep you engaged. And their entire business model is to try to keep you engaged, and they are selling your engagement to advertisements. And so they're gonna show you as many things that they think you will like. Back in the day, we all got newspapers, and we all read the same news every day. We'd open our newspaper. I remember being little, and I'd open the paper every day to see if the Reds had won, and they usually didn't, but I was hopeful. And so, I remember getting a newspaper. Now, can you imagine if everyone in the world was delivered a custom newspaper, and all the articles and everything was written to a way that would engage them or the way that they would like it? Because that's what happens with social media. And I say all that to say that more than ever, we need to be willing to have a Mordecai in our lives. We need to be willing to have someone in our lives who has permission to speak some hard words to us. They have permission to hold us accountable. They have permission to challenge us to do big things, to encourage and build us up to do big things. Esther couldn't have done all this if there wasn't some fear that she had to overcome, but she had a Mordecai. Who knows what happens in this story if there's not a Mordecai to challenge Esther, to call her up, to challenge her to do big things, but also to speak some hard words to her. And I really believe this. I believe with all my heart that each and every one of us is where we are at right now for such a time as this. But the one caveat I would put on that is that we are there for such a time as this to accomplish God's will and not our own.